Hi guys, I'm Lily Cummins, and today I'm in the northern Flinders Mountain ranges of southern Australia to talk about Nantawarrina Indigenous Protected Area. Nantawarrina Indigenous Protected Area is classified as a Category 6, which means that it is a protected area with sustainable use of natural resources. The sustainable use of these natural resources is supposed to happen in tandem with conservation, so if done properly, these factors can be mutually beneficial to each other. Now let's talk about some of the history of the area. Before Nantawarrina became an Indigenous Protected Area, the Adnyamathanha people, or the Indigenous residents of the area, lived on the land. But then, in the mid-1800s, pastoral leases were arranged between European settlers and the South Australian government without permission from the Indigenous people. They were then pushed off their land. The establishment of these European settlements forced the Adnyamathanha people off of their land in the first place. But then, with the use of bad agricultural practices, the water was then contaminated and resources became very scarce, which made the land uninhabitable to native peoples. In 1931, the land was organized to form the Nantawarrina Mission, a community whose purpose was to westernize Aboriginals by removing them from their families, prohibiting them from speaking their language, forcing them to convert to Christianity, as well as many other brutal practices. By 1987, the land inside and around what used to be the Nantawarrina Mission was overgrazed and degraded due to unsustainable agricultural practices. So when the Nantawarrina community required roughly 58,000 acres of extra land, they leased it to be grazed by local farmers as they could no longer use it for themselves. Soon the land was deemed unsuitable for agriculture, and in 1998, the Nantawarrina community created the first Indigenous Protected Area. The land that was set aside to be protected in 1998 at the Nantawarrina Mission soon became the world's first Indigenous Protected Area. An Indigenous Protected Area is a land management technique that's unique to Australia, in which Aboriginal Australians, as well as the Torres Strait Islander population, forms a pact with the Australian government to add land or sea to the National Reserve System. These tracts of land are to be managed for the conservation of biodiversity and the conservation of cultural history by Indigenous people. The South Aboriginal Lands Trust, the International Union for Nature Conservation, and the Australian National Reserve System were all organizations that played an instrumental role in the categorization, development, and dedication of an Indigenous Protected Area. The Australian government also pledged funding to the area in 1998. There is no evidence that the dedication of Nantawarrina was contested. This is because the park itself was a pilot project sponsored by the National Australian Government. So, any disagreement wouldn't have been supported so long as the Australian government was providing funding to the park. The purpose of protecting Nantawarrina was to renew the health of the landscape and restore Indigenous biodiversity, including the yellow-footed rock wallaby, which is a vulnerable Australian species.
Hey everyone, my name is Cameron Rolliter, and I'm here today with the feral goats of Nantawarrina in the Indigenous Protected Area. Feral goats are taking over the protected area and are the biggest direct threat to the park. Landscape degradation began in the park before the area was designated to be protected. Overfarming destroyed the land and species that lived there. The park went through a revegetation process to restore the soil and bring back native species.
However, the introduction of feral goats led to the park's fragile ecosystem being endangered and more degradation to the soil quality, as well as loss of nutrients throughout the protected area.
One of the solutions to the issues of feral goats is to remove them. However, due to large amounts of goat removals, the park has found itself struggling to fund removal processes. Mustering and trapping require technologies such as helicopters, motorbikes, and fencing. All these things cost lots of money. The park has found the cheapest way to remove goats is by volunteer hunters. Rangers don't like shooting the goats and prefer only to use this method when necessary. Another threat to this park is overgrazing. Overgrazing began in the 1980s before the creation of the park, which contributed to the degradation of the lands. Farmers owned sheep and cattle, which contributed to large amounts of overgrazing throughout the area. Along with their animals, farmers made the land infertile. This degradation impacted traditional Indigenous lifestyles. The effect of overgrazing became so severe that the area was given back to Indigenous people, and they offered the land to the Australian government to co-manage and successfully restore the area. Nantawarrina is home to feral buffalo, cane toads, camels, cats, deer, pigs, goats, foxes, rabbits, horses, donkeys, and dogs. While the number of each species varies, the effects of each animal can be seen throughout the park. Native mammals, birds, reptiles, and amphibians are experiencing large and increasing amounts of species loss due to feral animals eating the native plants the species require to survive. Loss of native species has led to more degradation of land and a decrease in biodiversity throughout the protected area.
Hey everyone, my name is Trevor Martin. The staff at Nantawarrina Indigenous Protected Area recognize that the threats within their park, like feral goats and land degradation, are long-term activities that require long-term solutions. These are long-term threats, and solutions involved may take years. But this time allows for the park staff to plan out budgets and personnel to match their projected needs for the future. The immediate, decisive intervention with threats like the goats will save significant future costs. The goats are not a problem that are going away anytime soon, but choosing to deal with them now is going to save significant costs of mass removal in future years. Taking the goats out periodically means that there will never need to be a large-scale removal of the goats in a short period of time. Since the park is acting now, the cost of removing goats in the future is reduced. The community is very involved in the park's management. The surrounding community actually is most of the staff at the park, and occasionally they'll hire hunters to come out and remove the goats with guns. Shooting is as simple as it sounds. The park will allow hunters who volunteer to go onto the land and shoot the feral goats to remove them. The rangers, however, tend to favor the less violent removal of goats and discourage hunting. All these methods of removal have removed over 9,000 goats in 2 years. While these planning tools have been successful, the population of goats has little to no natural predators, so the population will continue to be a problem in years to come. The best that the park can do is to continue to manage the population through the aforementioned methods of removal.